Hello everyone, Laura K. Buzz here, and I spent some time yesterday playing the co-op mode for Vampire Survivors that is releasing on August 17th on all platforms, and I wanted to make a video today to talk about my impressions of the co-op mode. Um, I had intended to have this up sooner, but my last 24 hours or so have been kind of drowned in me being the only person that had Vampire Survivors Director's Cut gameplay or hands-on impressions. But I finally got all that stuff out the way. I did record this once already, and then I uploaded it and realized there was no audio. My mic wasn't working for some reason, so we're just going to do it again. Anyway, here we go. So let's talk through what I experienced. I was playing in 3-player during the footage you're about to see here. I also tried 2-player and 4-player co-op. I was honestly really surprised at how thoughtful a lot of the balance and design decisions are for making this a workable game in co-op. There is no mad scramble for picking characters, and there are pros and cons to this. Player 1 picks their character, then player 2 picks their character, then player 3 picks their character. So if you are further down the player order, you will have last choice of character. I love playing as Poe. I was player 3 in this footage, and as you will see, player 2 picks Poe. You know, the politics of that you'll just have to decide as a group. It's not a mad sort of scramble dash. But the reason why you can't have more than one person play the same character is because you can't have duplicates of the same weapon or upgrade amongst the players. So player 1 picks like the stage select. They do all of the menu navigation. They're also the player that the camera follows during gameplay. So if player 1 tries to go to one side and player 3 tries to go to the other side, the camera's going to follow where player 1's going. So I'm going to sort of like pause this footage every now and then while we talk about it. Player 1 picks the first Arcana. After that, and this I learned the first time I tried to make this video, future Arcana are selected by whoever touches the Arcana chest. But like in practice, you as a group are going to like debate and decide what Arcana works for you. It really only impacts who's controlling the cursor. That being said, it's kind of, this is the only thing that really favors one specific player or favors a player who gets to a thing first. Everything else in this is either sort of randomized or very evenly spread out, and we will sort of talk in a second about how that works. So yeah, if I scroll back here, when we select an Arcana, anytime that the game is like paused on a menu screen like this, and then you go back to gameplay, all of the characters are highlighted with a colored outline, so that if it's really chaotic, when you come out of the pause menu, you can see at a glance, oh, that's me. I'm always looking for the yellow outline when I come back. I think that works really well. So you can kind of see it in the top left here. Actually, I'll talk about the leveling thing in a second. So, things I want to talk about. In terms of how many weapons and accessories each player can have, in a single-player game of Vampire Survivors, the default is that you can have 6 weapons and 6 accessories. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to say 6 weapons, but whenever I talk about number of weapons in this section, assume that also means number of accessories. So you get 6 in single-player. In multiplayer, that differs. In 2-player, you get 4 each for a total of 8 as a team. 3-player, you get 3 each for a total of 9 as a team. 4-player, you get 2 each for a total of 8 as a team. And no matter what your team size, that means that as a team, collectively, you have considerably more weapons and upgrades and accessories than a single-player player would. Like, as a team, you are potentially stronger than a single-player character. But as an individual, you are weaker. You have access to less tools. Which means, and we'll see this as we get further into the footage from yesterday, that as you get deeper into this, you have to work harder to, like, stay together and work as a team and keep close by, because you are less than a single-player character when solo, more than a single-player character when you come together. This is the other thing I want to talk about. So, in terms of leveling, it is harder to level up your weapons and evolve your character, evolve your weapons in multiplayer than it is in single-player, because every time you level up, it cycles in player order through who gets a level up. So first level, player 1. Second level, player 2. Third player 3, fourth, player 1, player 2, player 3, and it just like cycles round and around through player order. So you are going to have fewer level ups over time, which means you're going to find it harder to fully level up a weapon to get it to evolve, which again mitigates you. It balances a bit the fact that you have, in theory, as a team, more weapons and more upgrades than a single player would. Um, I want to talk about something else in a second here, which is how accessories work, because accessories are one of the more interesting multiplayer mechanics. So, for anyone who's played Vampire Survivors, you know that like certain weapons, if you also have a certain accessory equipped, you can fully level up the weapon and evolve it into a more powerful form. You don't need to have fully leveled up the accessory, you just need to have the accessory and the fully leveled weapon. Now, in this, you can't have the same accessory as someone else. If someone picks an accessory, you can't get that accessory on your build. But they've done something really smart here. If you have an accessory, like for example, I, player 3, picked up the attract orb. I get the benefit of the attract orb, the ability to sort of draw things in from a larger radius. I'm the only one that gets that because I picked that for my build. But player 2 right now, Poe, has the option of getting the Santa Water, which if they accept, that's a weapon that needs the attract orb to evolve, and they don't have the attract orb. Thankfully, as long as someone in the team has the accessory you need, your weapon can evolve. So, despite the fact I have the accessory, Poe could get the Santa Water, fully level it up, and evolve it because someone on the team has the required accessory. And I think that's really nice. While we're here, let's also talk about the Friendship Amulet. A really common upgrade option, a level up option that's offered in co-op. I think in the first 5 minutes of this footage it shows up like 4 times. Every player gets a level up for one of their existing weapons. Now, sure, sometimes there will be something else on this list that, like, you know, a weapon or a accessory you've been looking for synergy, and you're like, I have to go for it. But generally speaking, if the Friendship Amulet comes up, you should go for it. It's really overpowered in the best of ways. First of all, it gets 3 level... in 3-player, for example, you're getting 3 level ups for the price of 1. 1 level up got 3 players each, one of their weapons leveled up. It's... Considering that, like, your weapons are harder to level up because you're getting fewer levels, you know, as an individual anyway, this is worthwhile. But also, note that it doesn't randomly upgrade your accessories, only your weapons. And again, I think that's really smart, because the whole aim of this is it's trying to help you get your weapons up to max level, because getting weapon evolutions is kind of harder in multiplayer. But the Friendship Amulet guarantees that you are definitely going to be upgrading a weapon and getting closer to a potential evolution, which I think is just really smart design. I'm looking through my notes. Oh, Arcanas affect everyone. I know we sort of glossed over Arcanas at the start there. No matter who selects an Arcana, the whole team gets the Arcana's benefit. What else do I have in my notes? We'll talk about this more. I'll show you an example at the end, but let's talk about how revives work and deaths work in this. So if you run out of health as an individual character, like let's say I, player 3, run out of health, I would go into a coffin, and that coffin has a meter on it that automatically refills over time. You don't have to, like, your teammates don't have to be near it or touching it or fighting enemies or anything. It just automatically refills over time. And the thing that I think really works about that is that the further into a run you are, sorry, I'm trying to work out how to convey all this. The further into a run that you are, the quicker that meter refills. So early on in a run, a player that like runs out of HP will be out of action for longer. Whereas if it's like 28 minutes into a 30-minute run, and we need all of the stuff we can have to like have any chance of staying alive, we won't have to like buy for time quite as long for the player that's down to like pop up out the coffin and be fine. This doesn't take up revives. Revives work kind of separately. So if you have like you know, permanent upgrades to get some X number of revives per run, or an individual player has the tiramisu, or you have the Arcana that gives you 3 revives. If you run out of health, you just pop straight back up instantly with no delay. That's what the revives do. They basically prevent you having to do the cooldown in the coffin. The fail state for co-op isn't running out of revives, in that you can end up in the coffin as many times as you like, and as long as your teammates stay alive long enough like for you to pop out the coffin, it hasn't like taken up a finite resource. The only loss condition is if all three of you were in coffins at the same time, which I feel like there's some interesting synergies I didn't get a chance to play around with, of like one player has like the clock lancet and one has the laurel, and while one's being protected by one, the other's, you know, while one's not protected, the other's being protected, and like making sure that one of you stays alive at all times could be a really interesting way to try and like game the end of runs. Oh, let's talk about chests. We've not really talked about chests yet. Okay, this is probably a good example. So there is a chest up there. I think Poe's gonna go get the chest, I'm guessing. And we can show off how that works. So yeah, Poe got the chest. When you open it, there'll be a little roulette on the side. So it's not that whoever touched the chest gets the bonus, which I really like. That I'm really glad that's not the case, because that makes me think of like MMOs where the first person to touch the epic loot gets the loot, because that would really disincentivize playing slow moving characters in co-op, like Peppino, the Christmas tree covered in garlic bulbs. Because you'd never get any of those bonuses because you'd never be the one fastest to get to the chest. Getting to the chest, it's not like I want to touch the chest because I want the reward. It's I want to get there fast so that we as a team don't have to worry about it. But yeah, it'll run. As I understand it, this is a purely random spin of the dice. I do wonder whether I would like to know if it weights it in certain situations, because like for example, if you're trying to evolve your weapons and like two players in co-op both have weapons that are ready to evolve, the chest will roll to see who gets to evolve a weapon. See, there's the friendship amulet again. And I do wonder, let's say one player had like evolved several of their weapons already and the other player hadn't evolved any of theirs, would it slightly weight the odds in the favor of the person who hasn't evolved any yet? That would be interesting, but don't take that as confirmed. As far as I understand it, I think the official line is it is just purely random. But yeah, as you can see, early on in this, we're able to be like fairly spread out because, you know, it's not that difficult yet. But I'm gonna start skimming forward shortly to later in the run, because I think that's sort of the more interesting place to talk about the pacing of how co-op mode works. Let me just check. Is there anything else I want to talk about on this list here? No, I think this is a good point for me to just start skimming forward in the run a little bit and finding some good examples of stuff. So yeah, as we get more chaotic, this is maybe 10 minutes into the run, you're already starting to see we're bunching up a bit more together and doing less spreading out, just because none of us have any evolved weapons, and tell you a secret, none of us will evolve any of our weapons in this whole half-hour run. We just, like, for example, I picked a character that has 2 guns, and I can't evolve my weapon unless I fully power up both guns and get the tiramisu, and then and like only getting a third of the level ups just made that considerably harder to do. Yeah. Let's... Oh no, did I accidentally put us back to the start? Let me skim ahead a little here. Yeah, let me find some slightly later gameplay as it gets a bit more chaotic, and you can see we start developing a strategy. We all sort of stay close together. And we've got our witch that fires the sparkles up and down, which is good for like enemies above and below us. I have the guns that go left and right, so I'm pretty good at like keeping enemies away from our left and right. Poe has like a radius of defense, so if we're cornered, we can sort of retreat into that and be a little safer. And if you look at this sort of big enemy we're fighting, we start to realize here, like 15 minutes in, that the fact that there's 3 of us and our cooldowns aren't quite on the same timings as each other, and we can alter our positions, means that we can do a pretty effective job of like stun locking big enemies. Because when one of our you know, when one of our weapons stops being has its cooldown, someone else's weapon is probably working in that moment, and between us, we have more weapons than we would on a standard build. Sure, they're not upgraded, but we have 6 weapons in this 3-player game as opposed to 9, which means that there is less time than a single-player game where none of your attacks are happening. You've got a much better chance of one of them is always going off, and that makes stun locking a bit easier, and that is... It has really interesting impacts on how this works. So I'm going to skim a bit more forward just to... Because I want to show off particular things. Yeah, you can see the stun locking in effect again here. We do a pretty effective job of like really slowing down that witch's ability to basically do anything but slowly amble and take it down pretty quickly. Between us, we just keep our lockdown. But yeah, let me get... Here we go, 27 minutes into the run. We're nearly done with the run. Everything is getting more and more chaotic. We've got the protector of the ring. That basically the cape wearing a mask. Very heavy HP enemy to try and kill. But again, as long as we stick together, the fact we have more weapons means that even though they're not evolved and not at their strongest and not fully leveled up, we're still able to sort of hold our own toward the end of the run, as long as we stick together, take advantage of the fact that, you know, if we separated from each other now, none of us individually are very strong, but together we're quite a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, let's watch right at the end. We're in the last 60 seconds before death will show up, and we just found a little bit of a rhythm. We kept our space, kept it open, and you'll kind of get a glimpse of the coffins right at the end here when death comes in, only briefly. One of the coffins has long enough to spawn, but I'm gonna find a quick video of co-op in the dairy plant level, just to show you the death mechanic in action. We had to actively go out of our way to get a death here because we started with an Arcana that gave us a bit of a damage radius, so early enemies were just dying instantly to us anyway, but there is a strong enemy that player 1 finds in a second, this Minotaur, I think. Yeah. The player 1 just runs headfirst into. They're going to come up on the left. You can see the deliberate attempt to get to death here because we just wanted to see how the mechanic worked. So yeah, player 1 pops up in a coffin. You see the sort of black keyway in the middle. It fills up with yellow. This is 3 minutes into the run, so it's going to be kind of slow. But even then, it's only going to be like, I think like maybe 30 seconds. And 15. This is on hurry or hyper mode, I think. Yeah, it looks like about 30 seconds on the in-game timer, which might be less than 30 seconds depending on whether you're playing a mode that speeds up that timer. And then you pop back out with half health and keep going. But yeah, there you go. That is the Vampire Survivors co-op mode. I played like an hour and a quarter of it, and it feels really smart. I think that limiting the number of weapons and items everyone gets does a good job of balancing the power level, but also like making sure that an already chaotic game doesn't get too much more chaotic. I think that mechanics like the Friendship Amulet make a lot of sense. I think this is a really smartly thought through co-op mode. It's only local couch co-op, but I guess on PC you could use the that feature where you play over the internet but pretend that you're playing couch co-op that Steam allows you to do, and that might work, though I haven't tested it so I can't confirm. If you haven't seen yet, go check out the either the Twitter thread or the videos on this YouTube channel on Laura K. Buzz of me playing Vampire Survivors Director's Cut for some reason and explaining what on earth was going on there. Thank you very much everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Bye!